of course, you and your husband, you were at the royal wedding. I mean, the good one, Harry and Meghan. You weren't there, no. No.
I didn't even know they got married.
But now, here's the thing, because I'm sure it's a lovely day. It's a lovely day. But how early do you have to get there?
Long before the headlines turned into a global media circus, Meghan Markle believed she had mastered her public image.
Since you can speak for all Brits,
Yeah.
what would you say is the overriding kind of feeling about Harry and Meghan over there at this point?
Well, it's difficult. I think in the press, it's very kind of anti-them.
Yes.
And it's been a sort of a gift to William and Kate.
But that illusion shattered on live television, leaving a room full of Hollywood's elite laughing at the exact same brutal joke. The iconic red sofa of the Graham Norton Show became the stage for a public roasting that is still circulating years later, exposing the true vulnerability behind the royal exit. Why did the mockery from Norton's celebrity guests set off a chain reaction Meghan could never outrun? Join us as we uncover the full story behind all this. The royal exit and the Graham Norton humiliation. On January 8, 2020, Harry and Meghan posted a statement announcing they plan to step back as senior members of the royal family.
Harry asking people to understand why.
I would step my family back from all I have ever known, to take a step forward into what I hope can be a more peaceful life.
Work toward financial independence and split their time between the UK and North America. Nobody at Buckingham Palace had been given a heads up. The Queen, Prince Charles, and Prince William reportedly found out from the headlines just like everyone else. Within hours, the story was everywhere, and by the next morning, the papers had already coined the nickname that stuck, Megxit. Headlines screamed about a family in crisis and a marriage rewriting the rules of royal duty in real time. It's worth remembering what Meghan's arrival looked like just a couple of years before that. And that background matters, because it's exactly what made Graham Norton's monologue land the way it did just days later, turning a bad news cycle into a full-blown public humiliation. She came in as a fresh face, a working actress from Los Angeles who seemed to bring some modern energy into a very old institution. The wedding in May 2018 was watched by millions around the world, and for a while, the story being told was a fairy tale one. But that's the thing about fairy tales. They rarely survive contact with real life, and it didn't take long for a very different narrative to start leaking out from inside the palace walls. Royal correspondent Valentine Lowe's book, Courtiers, later revealed that a group of former royal aides had grown so unhappy working for the Sussexes that they started calling themselves the Sussex Survivors Club. Meghan's team denied every bit of it, and her spokesperson called the claims a calculated smear campaign. At first, the cracks were small. There were reports of tension with Kate Middleton before the wedding, whispers about clashes between Meghan's team and royal protocol, officers who weren't used to anyone pushing back on how things had always been done, and reports that the pace Meghan wanted to move at didn't match the slower, more careful rhythm of palace life. None of that sounds dramatic on its own, but small cracks tend to add up, and by late 2019, they had turned into a very public rift, with Harry and Meghan noticeably skipping the usual family Christmas plans and giving a television interview where they openly admitted they were struggling. What made it worse for a lot of royal watchers was the timing. The announcement dropped right in the middle of a week, when the Queen was already dealing with fallout from Prince Andrew's disastrous interview about his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. So instead of one royal crisis, the family suddenly had two running at the same time, and the press had a field day comparing them. Some commentators pointed out that Harry and Meghan's exit came only about a year and a half after the wedding, which made it feel to some observers like a much shorter runway before walking away. That's exactly why a lot of the British public reacted the way they did. Many people felt like the couple wanted the perks of royal life, the titles, the security, the global platform, but not the actual duty that came with it. Once people feel like someone is taking without giving back, they stop cutting that person any slack, and comedians know it. A frustrated public is an easy audience because the joke doesn't have to work that hard when everyone already agrees with the punchline. The Guardian's coverage of the announcement captured just how blindsided the palace felt, and that sense of betrayal is exactly what comedians would spend the next few years mining for laughs. Which brings us to the moment that really put Meghan on blast in front of a live audience. On the very first episode of his show in January 2020, just one day after the Megxit announcement broke, Graham Norton opened with a monologue that went straight at the story, dominating every front page. According to IB Times UK's coverage of the episode, he put up a photo of Harry and Meghan and told the crowd that people usually come back from Christmas and quietly tell their boss where to stick it. But Meghan had gone one better. His exact line was that, "You win the lottery, then you quit," comparing marrying into the royal family to hitting the jackpot and then walking away from the job anyway. The studio audience laughed hard and loud, and it wasn't a polite chuckle either. It was the kind of big group laugh that shows the whole room was already on the same page before the punchline even landed. He didn't stop at one joke. Norton also brought up the roughly £2.4 million of public money that had gone into refurbishing Frogmore Cottage, the home the Queen had gifted the couple, pointing out how awkward it looked for them to walk away from royal duty so soon after that kind of spend. Then, in a rare, more serious beat, he told the audience that part of why the couple wanted out was how badly the British press had treated them, a line that got a much quieter, more thoughtful reaction than the jokes before it. What made the moment sting the way it did wasn't just the joke itself, it was the fact that the laughter in that room reflected something bigger. A lot of people watching at home agreed with what Norton was getting at, even the parts that weren't jokes. When a host mocks a royal exit and the room roars, that's a pretty clear signal of where public opinion is sitting. It wasn't a guest tearing into Meghan face to face, but it didn't need to be. The reaction alone told the story, and it humiliated her on the very first night the world got to react out loud. That's the thing about live studio comedy. The audience can't fake a laugh the way a comment section can be flooded with bots or coordinated posts. A room full of real people reacting in real time either finds something funny or it doesn't. And on that night, they clearly did. That kind of unscripted reaction is hard to argue with, because it wasn't manufactured for a headline. It happened because a joke about a very sensitive royal story landed exactly the way the writers hoped it would. That's actually part of what makes Norton such an effective voice on a story like this. He's Irish. He's been hosting one of the biggest chat shows on British television for well over a decade. And he's built a reputation for being able to say the thing everyone is already thinking without ever quite crossing into cruelty. So when he decides a topic is worth joking about, it tends to feel less like an attack and more like he's simply saying out loud what half the country was already muttering to themselves. Norton didn't stop there either. He's talked about the Sussexes more than once on other platforms too, including an appearance on Andy Cohen's Watch What Happens Live, where he suggested that the constant negative press around Harry and Meghan had actually worked out well for Prince William and Kate, since it kept the spotlight, and the criticism pointed somewhere else. In simple terms, he was saying that every bad headline about the Sussexes was one less bad headline for the future king and queen. That's a sharp read on royal politics, dressed up as a joke, and it's exactly the kind of line that gets clipped and shared 1,000 times over, which is part of why Norton's name keeps coming up whenever this story resurfaces. And here's the part that really shows this wasn't a one-off. Norton went right back to the same well nearly 3 years later, when the Netflix docuseries Harry and Meghan dropped in December 2022. He opened his show that week by welcoming any new viewers who are watching us after canceling their Netflix subscription, then joked that the couple's revelations had ruined King Charles and Camilla's Netflix and chill night. Same host, same sofa, same format, years apart, still finding fresh angles to poke at the same story. That's not a comedian who told one joke and moved on. That's a recurring bit the audience clearly kept wanting more of, and it kept the humiliation from that first night alive long after the headlines had moved on. But the entertainment world wasn't the only place where the couple faced steep challenges. the pattern of criticism and the business struggles. Once Norton's jokes made the rounds, other comedians and critics didn't take long to pile on. The public reaction to that first monologue had already shown there was an appetite for this kind of material, and plenty of people in entertainment were happy to keep feeding it. In February 2023, South Park aired an episode called The Worldwide Privacy Tour, featuring a prince and princess of Canada who insisted they wanted privacy while doing everything possible to stay in the spotlight. The prince character promoted a book called WOG, a direct dig at Harry's real memoir Spare. The episode never named Harry and Meghan directly, but nobody watching had any doubt who it was about. Reports at the time said Meghan was genuinely upset by it and refused to watch the whole thing. The joke landed because it captured a contradiction a lot of people had already noticed. A couple who said they wanted to disappear from public life while signing some of the biggest media deals in entertainment. And that contradiction is really the heart of why the criticism kept piling up. When Harry and Meghan signed with Spotify in a deal reportedly worth around £18 million, expectations were sky high. But their podcast, Archetypes, only ran for 1 season and 12 episodes before Spotify canceled it. An insider close to the deal later joked that the company felt markled, a phrase that stuck around as shorthand for a partnership that promised a lot and delivered a lot less. Netflix told a similar story in miniature. Their first big docuseries, Harry and Meghan, became one of Netflix's most watched documentary debuts ever, so on paper it looked like a massive win. But the coverage that followed wasn't exactly kind. Plenty of critics pointed out that the couple was rehashing a lot of the same ground they'd already covered in their sit-down interview with Oprah, just stretched out over several hours instead of one. Then came the cooking and lifestyle show, With Love, Meghan, which pulled a few million views in its opening week, respectable by most standards, but nowhere near the numbers Netflix considers a genuine hit. One review described it as feeling almost disconnected from how most people actually live day to day, which is a tough note to shake once it's out there. Staff turnover added another layer to the story. Since leaving royal life, the Sussexes have gone through a long list of communications staff, with Chief Communications Officer Meredith Maines stepping down after less than a year, making her the 11th publicist to exit since the couple left the UK. Maines had come in with a strong background in tech and venture capital, and her departure followed hot on the heels of another director of communications leaving just 2 months earlier. That kind of churn raises an obvious question like, if so many people keep walking away so quickly, what does that suggest about what it's actually like working behind the scenes? It's the kind of pattern that makes headlines practically write themselves. And it's the exact type of detail comedians and commentators alike keep coming back to whenever a new controversy breaks. Now here's where the contrast really jumps out. Compare all of this to Victoria Beckham. She spent nearly 15 years running a fashion label that lost money every single year, accumulating over £66 million in losses at one point, with the brand losing around £4,000 a day at its very worst. David Beckham had to loan the business money just to keep it alive, and Victoria said so openly, on camera, without playing the victim. She called it a snowball rolling down a mountain, and admitted she felt really desperate. That honesty is part of why her brand posted £112.7 million in revenue in 2024, its 4th straight year of double-digit growth, with her satin kajal eyeliner now selling 1 unit every 30 seconds. Meghan's story so far reads differently. When her ventures hit trouble, the explanation tends to point outward rather than inward. And that's a pattern viewers and critics alike have picked up on. The business side gave critics fresh material too. After a first brand, American Riviera Orchard, folded under trademark trouble when the gourmet food company Harry and David pushed back over the name, Meghan relaunched as Ever in April 2025, with the first collection selling out within an hour. Netflix signed on as an equity partner alongside her cooking show. But by March 2026, Netflix and As Ever ended that partnership, with As Ever saying the brand was ready to stand on its own, while Netflix called the split always intended. Critics online were quick to pile on, with the phrase, "Netflix got Markled enough," going viral within hours. Whether the split was a sign of confidence or a sign of trouble is still being debated. But either way, it added one more headline to a growing pile, and one more reason for the jokes to keep writing themselves. The wider Harry and Meghan production deal with Netflix had already been quietly downgraded to a smaller first-look arrangement months earlier. A detail that only added to the sense that momentum was slowing rather than building. On top of that, Montecito is not a cheap place to live. Maintaining security, staff, and the kind of lifestyle expected of the couple takes real, steady money, and one-off media deals only go so far when the novelty of the royals who left starts to wear off. That financial pressure is part of why the brand launches have felt rapid fire. Jam 1 year, a Netflix show the next, wine and candles after that, and it's part of why the public keeps reading every new pivot as more evidence that nothing is quite finding its footing. Then there's the story critics love to bring up, the photo. In 1996, a 15-year-old Meghan was photographed sitting on a fence outside Buckingham Palace with her best friend at the time, Ninaki Pretty, who has since said Meghan was fascinated with royal life long before Harry ever entered the picture, even joking she wanted to be Princess Diana 2.0. Here's why it keeps resurfacing. In her Oprah interview, Meghan said she knew very little about the royal family before meeting Harry. Pretty's account directly contradicts that, and the mismatch keeps this old photo relevant every time a new controversy hits. There's no consistent voice running through any of it, and with a business built entirely around one person, there's no one in the room able to tell her an idea isn't ready yet. That combination, rapid staff turnover plus a brand that leans entirely on personal celebrity, is exactly the kind of thing that makes each new launch feel like it's starting from scratch instead of building on what came before. There's also a broader identity problem that keeps feeding the criticism. It's not always clear what Meghan is actually trying to sell. Is she a humanitarian, a cooking show host, or a lifestyle entrepreneur? Trying to be several things at once, sometimes within the same press cycle, has made the brand harder to define, and audiences tend to gravitate toward brands with a clear, singular purpose, instead of one that reinvents itself every few months. The pricing hasn't helped either. A jar of jam or a scoop of flour sprinkles, running well into the double digits, invites an obvious comparison to a family that says it wants to feel relatable while operating in a very different financial world than most of the people watching the videos. That's not automatically a fair criticism. Plenty of lifestyle brands charge premium prices, but fair or not, it's the kind of detail that gets repeated in comment sections and think pieces every time a new product drops, and it's exactly the sort of gap that keeps this whole story feeling unresolved rather than settled. Put all of that together, the comedy, the staff exits, and the business pivots, and it becomes clear why the humiliation from that first Norton monologue never really faded. It just kept finding new headlines to attach itself to, right up through the questions that still follow the family today. The children, titles, and what comes next. When King Charles took the throne in 2022, Archie and Lilibet automatically became a prince and a princess under a rule set out by King George V in 1917. In March 2023, Buckingham Palace's own website was updated to reflect that, listing them as Prince Archie of Sussex and Princess Lilibet of Sussex. Harry has said he hopes his children will one day be able to choose for themselves whether they want to take on royal duties, a stance that keeps the door open even from California without committing either child to a public role before they're old enough to decide for themselves. Privacy has been a constant tension point here too. The couple has pushed hard to keep the kids out of most public photos, yet every rare glimpse, whether it's a birthday post or a christening photo, sparks intense online discussion. That's the same contradiction that shows up everywhere else in this story. A family asking for space while operating very publicly at the same time. The relationship between the Sussexes and the rest of the royal family has stayed strained in the years since Megxit, with only small moments of thaw here and there. Brief meetings between Harry and King Charles the occasional statement about wanting reconciliation, but nothing that's really settled the deeper rift. Royal commentators have pointed out that this pattern, brief thaw followed by renewed distance, has repeated itself several times since 2020, which makes any talk of a full reconciliation difficult to take at face value. The basic legal facts of succession are laid out clearly by the House of Commons Library's briefing on the line of succession and by the royal family's own official page on how succession works. Harry, Archie, and Lilibet remain 5th, 6th, and 7th in line, a ranking confirmed by Britannica's rundown of the full order of succession and echoed on independent trackers like BritRoyal's official line of succession list.
None of that is in dispute. What is worth noting is just how rare and difficult it actually is to change that order.
Removing anyone from the line of succession requires an act of Parliament, and given that the UK shares its monarch with several Commonwealth realms, any change typically needs those governments on board too. That's a process so involved that it's only being seriously discussed in 2026 for one specific case, Prince Andrew. And even then, it's expected to take considerable time. So while online chatter about the Sussex children's standing tends to flare up whenever a new photo surfaces, the actual legal bar for anything to change is extremely high. Stepping back to look at the whole picture, it's easy to see how one thread connects to the next. The exit created the shock. Norton's monologue turned that shock into a public income. Humiliation. The jokes never really stopped, and the business ventures gave critics new material every time an old joke started to fade. Add in real questions about the children's future roles, and the result is a story that keeps renewing itself instead of fading into the background the way most royal news eventually does. Every new brand launch, every Netflix update, every rare photo of Archie and Lilibet gets picked apart the same way, and every time it happens, the jokes from years ago get pulled back out and recirculated right alongside it. That's the strange thing about public image once it's been shaped this early and this hard. It tends to stick around, whether the person at the center of it wants it to or not. So, do you think the Graham Norton moment was fair or too harsh? And do you believe Meghan can build a successful life away from the royals? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.